Ngozi sat on her wooden stool in the evening breeze, staring at the folded cloth on her lap. It wasn't just any cloth. It was her late mother's wrapper, woven with colors that danced in the sunlight. Villagers often said it carried blessings. Anyone who wore it found favor in life. For Ngozi, it was more than a rumor. She had worn it on her graduation day and miraculously secured a job the next week. She had wrapped it around her waist during her wedding, and peace had followed her marriage. This wrapper was sacred. Now she had a big Thanksgiving service in church. She wanted to look her best, to honor her mother's memory and her God. But the wrapper was dusty and stained from being in the trunk for too long. So she made a decision she would regret. She took it to the town's most popular dry cleaner, a man named Chike. Chike's shop was always filled with clothes from the rich, agbadas, lace, designer gowns. He smiled warmly when Ngozi walked in, his eyes immediately falling on the wrapper. He handled it carefully, but his heart raced with greed. He had heard whispers of mystical garments before, but this one shone differently. "Don't worry, madam. I will take good care of it," he assured. Ngozi, innocent and trusting, left the cloth behind. As she walked home, she thought of her mother's words. "Not every hand that touches your treasure is worthy." The phrase tugged at her chest, but she brushed it aside. Friend, let me pause here. If you are listening to this and you've ever trusted someone with something precious, you know the fear of betrayal. If you don't subscribe now, you might miss the twist that proves not everyone who smiles at you means well. Think carefully. Are you willing to lose wisdom because you refuse to click one red button? Subscribe now before it's too late. Those who won't subscribe, go to the comments and tell us why you would walk away from protection when it's freely given. Night fell, and in the shadows of his shop, Chike sat alone staring at the wrapper. "This one cloth alone can change my fortune," he whispered to himself. He thought of the city women who would pay fortunes for unique garments. He smiled, convinced that fate had handed him gold wrapped in fabric. But fate, as he was about to learn, doesn't take bribes. Ngozi couldn't sleep that night. She tossed on her mat, restless. Something gnawed at her heart. Why had her mother's words echoed so strongly in her ears? At dawn, she rose to pray, placing her hand on her chest. "God, protect my inheritance," she whispered. She planned to pick up the wrapper that afternoon, certain everything would be fine. Meanwhile, in the shop, Chike carried the wrapper into the back room and compared it to other fabrics. Nothing matched its richness. He laughed to himself. These villagers don't know value? She thinks she's coming back to collect this cloth? Never. He pulled out a faded second-hand wrapper, similar in pattern but dull and weak. He folded it carefully and placed it where Ngozi's wrapper had been. When Ngozi arrived, her smile faded the moment he handed her the cloth. "This is not mine," she said firmly, her hands trembling. Chike feigned surprise. "What do you mean? This is exactly what you brought yesterday." "No," she cried. "My mother's cloth was vibrant. It was alive. This is fade." Chike shrugged. "Memory plays tricks. Cloth fades with time." Ngozi pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please don't do this to me. That wrapper is all I have left of my mother." But Chike's eyes were cold. "Take what is yours and leave." By the time Ngozi left, villagers had gathered, whispering and laughing. Some mocked her. So she trusted Chike and now cries like a child. Others shook their heads, pitying her. Dear listener, pause for a second. Imagine losing the only treasure your mother left you. Imagine being mocked while your heart is breaking. If you don't subscribe now, you're treating this story like the villagers, laughing instead of learning. Don't be like them. Subscribe now, or explain in the comments why you think wisdom is not worth keeping. Ngozi went home, clutching the faded wrapper to her chest, her tears soaking it. She knelt by her bed, sobbing. "Mother, forgive me. I failed to protect your blessing." And in that moment, something shifted in the air. A wind blew through the window, lifting the faded cloth from her hands as if rejecting her sorrow. She froze, her eyes wide. Something told her this story was not over. Ngozi sat at her window the following morning, staring blankly at the marketplace outside. Her neighbors passed by with laughter, baskets of food balanced on their heads, and not one person seemed to notice the tears rolling down her cheeks. She held the dull wrapper tightly, praying it would somehow transform back into her mother's cloth. But prayers don't always come with immediate answers. Word of her plight spread quickly. Some women came to her door pretending to console her, but deep inside they were glad to see her humbled. "Ngozi," one said, "you can always buy another cloth. Why are you crying over something so small?" The words pierced her heart. How could they understand? It wasn't just cloth. It was memory. It was blessing. It was the thread that tied her to her late mother's spirit. Meanwhile, Chike strutted proudly through the village, holding his head high. Business flowed as usual. No one dared challenge him. But at night, when he closed his eyes, he saw Ngozi's face, broken, pleading. He heard her voice echoing, "Please don't do this to me." He shook himself awake, convincing his conscience that money would ease his guilt. He had plans already. A rich woman in the city had been searching for rare cloth, and he would deliver this one at a great price. Ngozi's nights became darker. She clutched the faded wrapper, praying, but her spirit felt hollow. Yet in her dreams, she kept seeing her mother smiling, whispering, "What is yours will return to you." Chike wrapped the vibrant cloth in a brown paper bag the following morning, locking his shop with excitement. He boarded a bus to the city, his heart racing with greed. As the bus sped past villages and forests, he imagined the fortune waiting for him. With this one sale, he could expand his business, buy a car, and finally earn respect beyond his small town. He reached the city by noon and went straight to the home of Madame Ebere, a wealthy trader known for collecting rare garments. Her mansion was filled with imported fabrics and gold embroidery, yet when she saw Ngozi's mother's cloth, her jaw dropped. "Where did you find this?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Chike smirked. "A rare find, madam, only for your eyes." Without hesitation, Madame Ebere paid him a huge sum. Chike left with joy in his heart and money in his pocket. He felt untouchable. But that night, while he celebrated with wine in his shop, something strange happened. A sudden gust of wind blew through, extinguishing his lamp. The room grew icy cold. The garments hanging on the wall swayed violently as though invisible hands tugged at them. And then, a spark. Fire broke out in one corner of the shop. Chike panicked, grabbing water, but the flames spread faster than his hands could move. By the time the villagers rushed to help, everything inside had turned to ashes. Every garment was gone, except one. Ngozi's mother's cloth lay untouched in the middle of the shop floor, glowing faintly as though mocking him. The next morning the story spread like wildfire. The villagers gathered outside Chike's burnt shop, whispering in fear. "Every cloth burned except that wrapper," they murmured. Some crossed themselves, others shook their heads. "It is not ordinary cloth. It carries spirit." Chike sat in the ashes, his clothes smeared with soot, his eyes wild. For the first time, pride left his shoulders. He trembled as he stared at the untouched wrapper lying before him. Fear gnawed at him, but greed still held him prisoner. Instead of returning it, he muttered, "I must sell it again. This cloth is cursed, but money is stronger than curses." Far away in the city, Madame Ebere woke up screaming. The wrapper she had bought was no longer in her wardrobe. She searched everywhere, overturning boxes and drawers, but it was gone. In her dreams, she had seen a woman, Ngozi's mother, warning her, "Return what is not yours, or peace will leave your house forever." By midday, Ebere returned to the village, her car screeching to a halt outside Ngozi's compound. Villagers followed curiously as she entered. Falling on her knees, she confessed, "My daughter, forgive me. I bought your mother's cloth from Chike, but it has refused to stay with me. Please take it back." Ngozi froze, her hands trembling as Madame Ebere held out the wrapper. Tears poured down her face as she clutched it tightly to her chest. The colors shimmered as if alive again. She whispered, "Mother, thank you." Villagers gasped in awe. Those who had mocked her now bowed their heads in shame. Ngozi sat in her compound holding the wrapper, her tears soaking into the vibrant fabric. For the first time since her mother's passing, she felt peace returning to her chest. The villagers who had mocked her now surrounded her in silence. One old woman stepped forward and said, "Child, your cloth is not ordinary. Guard it with your life. Spirits watch over it." But not everyone rejoiced with her. Jealousy brewed among some women who whispered, "So her mother's cloth carries power? No wonder she prospers." In their envy, they began plotting ways to touch it, to steal its blessings. Meanwhile, Chike sat alone in the ruins of his burnt shop. His wealth was gone, his pride shattered, yet his heart remained hardened. "I will not let that girl win," he muttered. His eyes glowed with desperation. He began wandering the village, searching for another chance to get the cloth back. Dear viewer, do you see how greed blinds a man even after disaster? If you don't subscribe now, you might miss the lesson that some people will rather chase shadows than accept their downfall. Don't be like them. Subscribe before pride consumes you. If you won't, then go to the comments and tell us why you prefer to mock wisdom than protect your own soul. That night, Ngozi dreamed again. She saw her mother standing under a great tree whispering, "Guard what is yours. Wolves still prowl." Ngozi woke trembling, realizing her battle was not yet over. The next morning, Chike appeared at Ngozi's doorstep. His clothes were dirty, his face unshaven. He knelt before her, his voice breaking. "Ngozi, forgive me. Please give me the wrapper. Let me sell it once more. I will share the money with you." Ngozi gasped in disbelief. "After all you did, after fire consumed your shop, you still crave this cloth?" Chike's eyes burned. "Don't you see? This wrapper is the key to fortune. We can both be rich." But Ngozi shook her head. "This cloth is not for sale. It is my inheritance, my blessing. You can't have it." Chike's face darkened. He stood abruptly and stormed off. Villagers who watched shook their heads. Some warned Ngozi, "Be careful. A desperate man is dangerous." Ngozi locked herself inside, clutching the cloth tightly. Fear filled her heart. She prayed aloud, "God, protect me. Don't let him take this from me again." That night, shadows moved near Ngozi's compound. Someone tried her door. She held the wrapper tighter, her heart racing. It was only the beginning. Chike's obsession grew like a disease. By day, he wandered the village like a madman, muttering about the cloth. By night, he lingered near Ngozi's home, hoping to snatch it. Villagers began to fear him, whispering, "The spirits are tormenting him." One evening, an elder called him aside. "Chike, you have crossed the line. This cloth is not for you. Return to your trade, rebuild your life, and leave her alone." But Chike sneered. "Elder, you speak like a poor man. Do you not see? With this wrapper, I can be greater than any of you." He stormed away, his eyes clouded with madness. Meanwhile, Ngozi confided in her pastor. She explained everything, the swap, the fire, the dream, and Chike's threats. The pastor frowned. "My daughter, what you carry is not just inheritance. It is a mantle of blessing. But mantles attract both favor and attack. Guard it with prayer, guard it with wisdom." That Sunday, the pastor asked the church to pray for Ngozi. The congregation lifted their voices, calling for protection. But even as prayers went up, Chike sharpened his plans. He would not stop until he laid hands on the wrapper again. That night, Ngozi wrapped herself in her mother's cloth before sleeping. For the first time in days, she rested peacefully, unaware that outside her window, Chike was watching, his eyes burning in the darkness. Chike no longer looked like the proud dry cleaner who once commanded respect in the village. His beard grew wild. His clothes smelled of smoke and sweat. and his eyes never stopped darting about. Yet the only thing he could see clearly was Ngozi's wrapper. He became like a hunter stalking prey. Villagers avoided him, whispering that the fire had burned his sanity along with his shop. But in Chike's mind, he wasn't mad. He was chosen. One night, he crept to Ngozi's compound again. From the shadows, he watched her through the window as she folded the wrapper neatly and placed it in a wooden chest. His heart thumped wildly. "Soon," he whispered, "it will be mine again." He stayed there until dawn, only leaving when roosters crowed. Ngozi sensed the danger. Each time she prayed, unease filled her heart. She started sleeping with the chest beside her bed, clutching the key tightly. "Mother," she whispered at night, "why does this cloth bring me so much fear when it should bring me joy?" But Chike's obsession was only beginning. He was ready to risk everything, even his life, for the cloth. And soon, he would make his move. The following week, Ngozi attended a wedding in a nearby town. She wore her mother's wrapper proudly, wanting to honor her late mother in public once again. The cloth shimmered beautifully, drawing admiring glances everywhere she went. Some whispered, "Her mother's blessing follows her." But hidden in the crowd was Chike. He watched from a distance, his fists clenched. Seeing Ngozi glow with the wrapper filled him with rage. "It should have been me," he hissed. "That glory should have been mine." His jealousy burned hotter than the fire that destroyed his shop. During the reception, when music and laughter filled the air, Chike slipped closer. At one point, he brushed past Ngozi, pretending to stumble. His hand reached for the wrapper, but a strange heat seared his skin. He jerked back instantly, his palm blistering as if fire had licked it. He gasped, holding his hand, but no one else seemed to notice. Ngozi felt a shiver down her spine. She turned suddenly, locking eyes with him. The way he stared at her wrapper told her everything. She knew then. Chike would never stop. That night, Chike sat alone, nursing his burned hand. Instead of fear, hatred consumed him. "If I cannot have it by touch, I will take it by force," he swore. And with those words, the line between desperation and madness disappeared. Days later, Ngozi heard a knock at her door. When she opened it, 3 rough-looking men stood outside. One of them spoke sharply. "We came from Chike. Give us the wrapper or face trouble." Ngozi's heart pounded. "Tell Chike the wrapper is not for sale. It is mine." The men laughed. "Everything has a price. Don't make us come back at night." With that, they walked away, leaving dust and fear behind. Ngozi collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She knew then that Chike was no longer just a threat in the shadows. He had declared tensions in the area. She ran to her pastor, trembling. After hearing her story, the pastor shook his head. "This man's greed will destroy him. But you, my daughter, must not give in to fear. Stand firm. God will fight for you." That Sunday, the entire church prayed over her and the wrapper. Some cried, others shouted in tongues. But even in the midst of prayers, Ngozi's mind replayed the warning. "Don't make us come back at night." Dear listener, pause. If men came to your door demanding your inheritance, what would you do? Do you see why you must subscribe now, so you don't miss how Ngozi survives this storm? If you ignore this and scroll away, you're just like those villagers who laughed at her pain until fire fell. Subscribe now, or explain in the comments why you'd rather walk blind while danger knocks at your own door. Outside the church, Chike waited under a tree, watching, plotting. His obsession had become warfare, and soon he would strike harder than ever before. That night, Ngozi barely slept. Every knock of the wind against her door made her jump. She sat by her bed, clutching the wooden chest that held the wrapper. Her mind replayed the words of Chike's hired men. "Don't make us come back at night." Fear crept into her heart like smoke, choking her faith. But as dawn broke, she made up her mind. She would not give up her mother's cloth. "This is my inheritance. I will rather pass away before I let them take it." she whispered. Meanwhile, Chike gathered with the 3 men under the shade of a mango tree at the edge of the village. His blistered hand was bandaged, but his voice was strong. Tonight, we strike. We will take the rapper by force. If she cries, let her cry. If she resists, silence her. One of the men hesitated. But Chike, the rapper, it is not ordinary. Didn't you see how fire spared it? Chike slammed his fist on the ground. Spare me your nonsense. Blessings belong to those who seize them. Tonight it will be mine. That evening, Ngozi's neighbor noticed strange men moving near her compound. She hurried over, whispering, Ngozi, be careful. Chike is restless. They planned something against you. Ngozi's knees grew weak, but she stood firm. She placed the wrapper around her shoulders and began to pray. And as night fell, footsteps approached her door. Ngozi's heart raced as heavy fists pounded against her door. Open up, a voice growled. She froze, clutching the wrapper tighter. The pounding grew louder, shaking the wooden frame. Ngozi, you think you're stronger than us? Open before we break it down. Ngozi's hands trembled as she whispered prayers. Lord, shield me. Mother, guard your cloth. Suddenly, the door gave way with a loud crack. The 3 men stormed in, their eyes wild. Chike followed closely behind, his face twisted with rage and desperation. Give it to me, he shouted, lunging toward her. Ngozi screamed, clutching the wrapper to her chest as she fell to the ground. The men surrounded her. One grabbed her wrist, another tried to snatch the cloth, but each time their hands touched it, they yelped in pain, recoiling as if burned by fire. Chike, however, pressed forward, ignoring the heat, his blistered hand trembling as he reached out again. Ngozi, this is bigger than you. Give it to me, he roared. She shook her head fiercely, tears streaming down her face. This is not yours, Chike. You will never have it. The men, frightened, began backing away, muttering about curses. But Chike was relentless. He grabbed a stick and raised it over Ngozi, ready to strike. Ngozi closed her eyes, bracing for the blow. But before Chike's stick could land, a loud shout pierced the night. Stop right there! Her pastor and several villagers stormed into the compound, holding lanterns and dangerous objects. Someone had seen Chike and his men slip in and had raised the alarm. Chike froze, his stick still in the air. The villagers surrounded him. Have you no shame? One elder shouted. You burned your shop with greed, and now you want to burn this girl's life too? But Chike snarled, refusing to lower the stick. This cloth is mine by destiny. I will not leave without it. The men who had followed him shrank back, shaking their heads. We want no part in this madness, they muttered before fleeing into the night. Chike stood alone, facing the villagers, his chest heaving. Ngozi sat trembling on the floor, the wrapper still clutched tightly in her arms. The pastor stepped forward. Chike, listen to me. This obsession will destroy you. Leave this cloth and repent before it is too late. But Chike laughed bitterly. Too late? No. It is only the beginning. None of you understand. This cloth is my key to greatness. I would rather lose my life than leave it behind. The villagers tightened their circle, their torches lighting the compound. But Chike's eyes glowed with madness. He wasn't done yet. The villagers tightened their circle, their lanterns casting long shadows across Ngozi's trembling figure. But Chike's madness only grew. His stick still raised, his blistered hand trembling, he screamed, This cloth is mine. You fools don't see it, but I see it. My greatness is locked inside it. The pastor lifted his hands, pleading, Chike, don't do this. You are destroying yourself. But Chike let out a wild laugh, his eyes red-shot. Then, with a sudden roar, he swung the stick, not at Ngozi but at the nearest villager. The man staggered backward, visible injury trickling from his forehead. Chaos erupted. The villagers rushed at him, but Chike fought like a man possessed. He swung wildly, striking one man in the ribs, another on the shoulder. He moved with the strength of desperation, his madness fueling every blow. Lanterns fell, spilling oil, flames licking at the edges of the compound. Women screamed, children cried. But Chike's rage drowned it all. Ngozi clutched her wrapper tighter, tears streaming. She cried out, "Why won't you leave me alone? Why won't you let me live in peace?" Dear listener, imagine this scene. One man against an entire village, driven by greed so fierce it blinds him to reason. Do you see why you must subscribe? If you don't, you risk becoming like those standing outside the fire, watching but never learning. Subscribe now, before greed consumes your own life. If you refuse, go to the comments and confess why you would rather be silent while others fight for wisdom. The villagers regrouped, stronger this time, advancing with sticks and dangerous objects. But Chike screamed and lunged forward again, aiming for Ngozi. He wasn't fighting for survival, he was fighting for obsession. Ngozi's screams tore through the night as Chike lunged toward her. Two men grabbed him by the shoulders, trying to drag him back, but he twisted free, landing a vicious blow on one's jaw. Visible injury splattered the dust. "Hold him," the pastor shouted. "He won't stop until someone lost his life." Chike roared like a wild animal, grabbing a burning lantern and hurling it at the crowd. The flame burst across the ground, scattering villagers in panic. Some fell, others scrambled for water, but Chike saw his chance. He rushed toward Ngozi, his blistered hand outstretched for the wrapper. Ngozi fell backward, clutching the cloth tighter, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Mother, help me." As Chike's hand touched the edge of the wrapper, a loud crack of thunder shook the sky, though no rain clouds were above. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Some villagers dropped their sticks, staring in fear. But Chike was undeterred. He yanked harder at the wrapper, his teeth gritted, his breath ragged. "It's mine. It has always been mine." The villagers rallied once more, surrounding Chike. 3 men tackled him to the ground, but even pinned, he thrashed and screamed, his eyes burning with madness. "I will not leave it. Take my life if you must, but I will not leave it." Ngozi trembled, realizing this man would rather lost his life in disgrace than surrender her inheritance. The struggle grew into more tensions. Chike fought like a wounded animal, biting, scratching, kicking. He broke free from the men holding him and swung his stick again, knocking one unconscious. Women wailed in fear, while men grunted in pain. "Chike!" the pastor thundered, his voice trembling with both fear and anger. "Stop this before you bury yourself in shame." But shame no longer lived in Chike's heart. Only hunger, only obsession. He staggered to his feet, face swollen, visible injury dripping from his mouth, yet his eyes never left Ngozi's wrapper. "I will have it, even if my injury stains it," he roared. The villagers charged again, their sticks clashing against his. The compound echoed with cries and the crack of wood on flesh. Firelight danced across terrified faces. Ngozi huddled in the corner, whispering prayers, clutching the wrapper as if her life depended on it. Finally, 4 strong men forced Chike to the ground, pinning his arms and legs. His chest heaved, his face twisted in fury. Yet even pinned, he shouted through gritted teeth, "This is not over. That wrapper will be mine. You will see." The villagers stood over him, panting, bruised. They had won the battle, but in Chike's madness, the tension in the area was far from finished. The villagers thought the struggle was over. They held Chike pinned to the ground, their chests heaving from exhaustion. But madness gives strength to the desperate. With a sudden twist, Chike bit down on one man's arm so fiercely that the man screamed and released him. In the chaos, Chike slipped free, snatching a broken piece of wood from the ground. His chest heaved like a beast, his injured face glistening with sweat. His eyes locked on Ngozi, who still clutched the wrapper in the corner of the compound. "If I can't have it in peace," he growled, staggering forward, "then I will take it by force." The villagers shouted, rushing after him, but Chike was faster. His madness fueled him as he leapt toward Ngozi, swinging the jagged wood down with heavy force. Ngozi screamed, rolling away just in time. The wood slammed into the ground where her head had been, splintering into pieces. She scrambled backward, clutching the cloth to her chest, but Chike's shadow loomed over her. He raised his arm again, spittle flying from his lips. It belongs to me. The villagers charged, but they were too far. Ngozi screamed louder than ever as Chike's weapon arced toward her again. The strike landed. The jagged wood ripped across Ngozi's shoulder, and she cried out in pain, visible injuries soaking into the wrapper. She collapsed, clutching both her wound and the cloth. Gasps filled the compound. Women screamed, some fainted. The pastor's voice cracked. "Chike, you will take her life." But Chike's face twisted into a terrible grin. "Then let her pass away, if that is the only way I can have it." His madness was complete. He lunged again, but this time the villagers were upon him. 4 men grabbed his arms. Another struck his back with a heavy stick, forcing him to the ground. Ngozi lay trembling, weak from the visible injuries but still clutching the wrapper tightly to her chest. Even in pain, she would not release it. "You will never have it," she whispered through tears. The pastor knelt beside her, praying frantically, while women rushed to bind her wound. But Chike still thrashed on the ground, spitting, cursing, his eyes wild. "She will not keep it. She will not." As they dragged Chike away, his voice echoed into the night. "This is not the end. Wound has touched the cloth. Now it is mine." The villagers shuddered, for even in defeat, his obsession burned hotter than ever. The next day the village was restless. Whispers spread quickly. "Chike nearly takes Ngozi's life." Some shook their heads in shame. Others murmured in fear. How could one man descend so far? Ngozi lay weak on her bed, her shoulder bandaged, her wrapper still clutched at her side. Sleep refused to come. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Chike's face twisted in madness, his weapon raised over her. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. But outside her compound, Chike was not finished. He paced like a caged animal, his bandaged hand twitching. Every breath he took was laced with obsession. "If her wound has touched it," he muttered, "then it already belongs to me. I just need to finish it." His friends had abandoned him. The villagers despised him, but his hunger only grew. He sharpened a dangerous object he had stolen, whispering to himself, "Tonight, no one will stop me. Not even God." Dear listener, can you see how far greed drags a man? He loses friends, dignity, even his soul, yet he still chases shadows. If you don't subscribe, you may one day find yourself blinded like Chike, losing everything yet still reaching for what destroys you. Don't gamble with your destiny. Subscribe now. If you won't, then comment and explain why you would rather fall with him than rise with wisdom. As night fell, villagers armed themselves, fearing Chike's next move. But no one knew how far he was truly willing to go. And Ngozi, still weak and wounded, clutched her mother's cloth tightly, whispering, "God, don't let him come back." But in the darkness, Chike's shadow crept closer once again. The night was heavy with silence. Even the crickets seemed muted, as if the village itself held its breath. Ngozi lay weak in her hut, her shoulder burning from the wound Chike had inflicted. The wrapper lay pressed against her chest, her only comfort. She whispered broken prayers, each word a plea for protection. But outside, Chike moved like a predator. His dangerous object gleamed under the moonlight, his eyes red-shot, his body gaunt from sleepless nights of obsession. He muttered to himself as he crept toward her hut. "Tonight it ends. Tonight the cloth is mine, even if I have to take her life." The villagers, though fearful, had set watchmen near Ngozi's compound. But Chike was cunning. He circled through the bush, crawling on his belly until he slipped through the back, silent as a snake. Step by step he advanced, the dangerous object trembling in his grip. Ngozi stirred, sensing a shadow in her hut. Her eyes flew open, and there he was. Chike stood over her, dangerous object raised high, his teeth clenched. "You should have given it willingly," he snarled. "Now I will take it with your life." Ngozi screamed, her cry echoing across the village. The watchman rushed toward the hut, but Chike's blade was already descending. Dear listener, pause here. Imagine being Ngozi, injured, helpless, facing death at the hands of a man blinded by greed. If you don't subscribe now, you are standing on the side of Chike, silent in the face of evil. Protect yourself with wisdom. Subscribe today. If you won't, then go to the comments and confess why you prefer to remain careless while others prepare for the dangers of life. The dangerous object slashed downward, aimed not at the rapper this time, but straight at Ngozi's chest. The dangerous object blade sliced the mat beside Ngozi as she rolled desperately to the side. Her scream rattled the compound, summoning villagers who came rushing with lanterns and sticks. But Chike was relentless. He yanked the blade free and swung again, each strike faster, wilder, fueled by madness. Ngozi crawled backward, clutching the rapper, visible injuries dripping from her shoulder. "Chike, stop," she cried. "You will take my life." "That is the point," he roared. "If I take your life, then nothing will stop me from owning it." His dangerous object gleamed as it narrowly missed her leg, striking the ground with sparks. The villagers burst into the hut, their shouts filling the air. But Chike turned on them with terrifying ferocity, slashing wildly. One man's arm was cut, another staggered back with a wound on his thigh. Women screamed outside as chaos spread. "Hold him!" the pastor yelled, but Chike moved like a man possessed, his strength unnatural. He charged again at Ngozi, who pressed her back against the mud wall, nowhere left to run. She shut her eyes as the blade rose once more, ready to end her life. Dear viewer, ask yourself, how far will you let greed destroy before you take a stand? If you don't subscribe now, you are no better than those who ran instead of helping. Don't watch this story like entertainment alone. Take the lesson. Subscribe or comment below and explain why you would choose silence over survival. The dangerous object began its deadly arc downward, and for a breathless moment, it seemed Ngozi's life would end. Time slowed. Ngozi's scream tore from her throat as the dangerous object rushed toward her. Villagers lunged from every corner, but they were too far. Chike's eyes blazed with triumph. "At last!" he shouted. But at the very last second, Ngozi raised the wrapper to shield herself. The dangerous object struck the cloth, and something unimaginable happened. A loud crack split the air like lightning. Chike's hand convulsed violently as the dangerous object flew from his grip, clattering across the floor. He staggered backward, clutching his wrist, his mouth open in shock. What is this?" he stammered. The villagers froze, staring wide-eyed. The wrapper glowed faintly in the dim light, shimmering as though alive. Ngozi, trembling and pale, clung to it with all her strength. Chike screamed, grabbing for the cloth again, but each time his fingers brushed it, blisters erupted on his skin. His body shook as though fire burned inside him. Yet still, he refused to stop. "It's mine," he shrieked, "even if I lose my life." Dear listener, are you watching how greed blinds even in the face of death? If you don't subscribe, then you too risk ignoring warnings until judgment crashes down on you. Subscribe now before your own hands burn with choices you cannot undo. If you won't, then comment below and tell us why you want to remain stubborn when wisdom knocks at your door. The villagers pulled Ngozi into their arms, shielding her, but Chike, his body trembling, staggered upright once more, eyes wild. He had failed, but in his madness, he wasn't done yet. The compound was in chaos. Villagers shouted, women wailed, and men tried to calm their families. But Chike stood trembling, his blistered hand still smoking from the touch of the wrapper. His chest heaved, his face twisted, yet his eyes remained locked on Ngozi. "I will not leave without it," he hissed, spittle flying from his lips, "even if it costs me my life." The pastor raised his voice. "Chike, can't you see? The cloth is not ordinary. You are destroying yourself." But Chike's laughter split the night like a knife. "Better to pass away with it in my hands than live empty like the rest of you." He staggered toward Ngozi again, ignoring the villagers who blocked his path. They struck him with sticks, but he did not feel the pain. They pushed him back, but he shoved them aside with mad strength. His body was failing, but his obsession kept him upright. Ngozi clutched the wrapper tighter, her tears falling onto the fabric. Her voice broke as she cried, "Chike, please, stop before it's too late." But reason no longer lived in him. Chike snatched up his dangerous object again, his muscles trembling. His voice lowered to a growl. "This time, I will not miss." And with those words, he prepared his final strike. The villagers surged forward, desperate to stop him, but Chike swung the dangerous object in wild arcs, forcing them back. His movements were unsteady, his body weakening, but his determination was frightening. His lips bled where he had bitten them in rage, his eyes wide with madness. He lunged at Ngozi, who stumbled backward, clutching the wrapper. She tripped against the wall of her hut, cornered with no escape. Chike raised the dangerous object high, his voice shaking with fury. "You will not deny me again." The villagers screamed, rushing to intervene, but Chike roared like a beast. "Stay back! This is between me and her." The dangerous object came down in a deadly arc. Ngozi threw up her arms, wrapping the cloth around herself as the blade struck. A deafening crack split the air again, brighter this time. Sparks flew from the dangerous object edge as though it had struck solid rock. The blade shattered into pieces, clattering across the floor. Chike froze, his eyes wide, his arms trembling. His weapon was gone. Yet instead of retreating, he screamed louder. "Then I'll take her life with my bare hands." He lunged forward, grabbing for Ngozi's throat. Villagers cried out in horror, rushing to drag him back, but his grip was iron. Ngozi choked, struggling, her hands clawing at his arms. Her tears fell onto the wrapper as she gasped for breath. Dear viewer, can you see the danger of unchecked greed? It strangles, it suffocates, it takes life itself. If you don't subscribe now, you're like Chike, gripping tightly to what destroys instead of releasing it. Subscribe today. If you won't, then comment below and confess why you prefer destruction to deliverance. Chike tightened his grip, his eyes wild with desperation, willing to take her life or lost his life. The villagers leapt onto him, prying at his arms, striking his back, shouting for him to let go. But Chike roared, refusing to release Ngozi. She gasped, her face turning pale, her strength draining fast. The wrapper slipped slightly from her hands, but she held it as if her life depended on it. Because it did. "Let her go, Chike," the pastor cried, striking his arm with a staff. "Do you want to bury yourself with her?" "I would rather lost my life than live without it," Chike bellowed, his voice echoing like a curse. His fingers dug deeper into Ngozi's skin. The villagers struck harder, some pulling his hair, others clawing at his arms, but his grip was like steel. Ngozi's body sagged, her breath shallow. Her voice came out in a faint whisper. "Mother, help me." At that moment, the air shifted. A strange wind blew through the compound, though the night was still. The villagers paused, their hands trembling. Even Chike froze for a heartbeat, his eyes darting around. But then he snarled and squeezed harder, determined to end her life. Dear listener, this is the danger of defiance, fighting against heaven itself. If you don't subscribe now, you're choosing the same path as Chike, resisting warnings until forces greater than you intervene. Subscribe before it's too late. If you won't, then comment below and admit why you insist on closing your eyes while destruction stands at your doorstep. As Chike's final grip tightened, the wrapper suddenly glowed, flooding the hut with light. A force surged through Ngozi's body, and Chike's scream pierced the night. His suicidal strike had awakened something he could never control. Now that Chike has done the unthinkable, will Chike finally have the wrapper with or Ngozi getting hold of her inheritance? Stay tuned for the continuation of the story. Thank you for watching the story all the way to the end of part 1. If you love the story and you want the continuation, please drop a comment below saying continue the story. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification button so you will be the first to know when the next part is uploaded. Thank you once again for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the continuation.